Now, taking a look at the scatter graph concept, you can start to see some of the limitations of other graphs. I'm quickly here just going to set up a line chart of this information. So we have two lines. I'm going to actually move that chart by right-clicking, selecting Move Chart, and put it to a new chart. We'll just call this 2-axis ValVol. And that doesn't look too bad. Again, we have all the supplier numbers down below. We have the actual values for each particular year. We could edit this a little bit, but I'll hold off for right now. I'll go back into my graph data just for a second. Notice that there's the counts during those times, so the volume and the values for each supplier. So if I wanted to add an additional data series, I can add that data series, go over to the graph data, and highlight first off the count data, and just maybe call this volume year 1. And again, just adding one more data series quickly to this, just to show you how to add data series, but also the limitations of this type of chart. And we will also, we'll call this volume, say, year 2. And now that we have that, we can actually go into these and edit these and just say, you know, values year 1. And just edit this one here, values year 2. Now, the problem with this chart is that the volume will never be seen on the chart again because of scale. So somehow I'm going to have to go down here and right-click and format data series and change that secondary axis. And if I could find the green one, I would do the same. But you can very quickly see how having 2 years worth of data, values, and then volumes, it's almost too difficult to even get the green, you know, fixed here. But let's try to fix the green here and say, yeah, put that on the secondary axis. So now I have, let me just, we'll just shoot back here. I have two different values and volumes that I can take a look at now. And however, this is very complicated to look at. A different way of looking at this would be to go to your scatter value volume, and this is actually the same amount of information that we're showing. However, much better way of looking at it. So let's just go back to this one here, a bit of a mess. That one there, a lot easier to see where the deviations and outliers are held. Now, to get to this type of chart, the scatter graph, I just want to note this is our volume, and our values are underneath. If we ever wanted to change or add that type of information, always a really good idea to do is you would want to select the chart, go to Chart Tools, you can go to your Layout, and then in the Axis Titles, you can easily just add a horizontal title. Let's just put this one in here, and we'll call this Values, and press Enter. If you'd like to change the font, you can go to the Home and just change that font to, say, 20, so you can see it. And then going back to Chart Tools, Layout, Axis Titles, we're going to do the primary vertical axis. We'll do a rotated title, and in this case we're going to put in Volume, again Home, and gotta hit Enter, and then we'll change that to 20 as well so you can see it. So you see your values and your volumes now very easily. And in addition to that, you can highlight within year 1 and year 2 some of these real outliers in the data. And just showing how you can scroll into data, I just use the scroll button on my mouse, but another way to do so is to actually use this open box here and just select the actual zoom you want. But on a graph like a scatter graph where you're showing all of the data points, sometimes it's a good idea to take a look with a, more of a magnification than less. Now, one thing that you can do to a chart, especially a scatter graph, is by going up to your chart tools, you can take a look at a variety of options that you have here, but in your layout you do have a trend line. And while I am not a pro at some of these trend lines, and I ask you to go take a look at the help menu of Excel, I think just putting a nice linear trend line in there and I don't think you could do both. I think you can only do one. We can probably add another linear trend line based on year 2 and have both trend lines in there. But it is interesting to kind of see that average and see again what's falling below and what's falling above those average trend lines. So let's take a look at the data. Now, initially we had graph data that looked like this, and this may be the type of data that you get where you have the amounts lined up and the counts lined up. For scatter graphing, it's not the best way to go. So we're going to take a look at the scatter data, and in this particular case, just take a look at these columns over on this left-hand side. What we've done is we've put them in more of an order of amount and count for each year 1 and year 2, and this makes it a lot easier for us to highlight and just go to the bottom there and inserting a chart to add that scatter graph. Now, once that scatter graph is added, I can easily right-click, select data, add a data series, and in this particular case we have many options here. I mean, the first thing is to take the X values, which would be this column E down to the bottom, and then the Y values, which are just set right within the same data series, would be the next series. And as you can see, we're just doing this quickly here just to show you, but obviously this chart looks a lot like the one that we have on its own, yet it was created using this approach. And what you'll want to do again, just to make it easier on yourself, is to highlight these data points and then just use the auto wizard of Excel to automatically calculate that this is the X and that is the Y. So going over to our scatter value volume again, by taking a look at the data points now that they have been scattered, we can actually just roll our mouse over points that we want to take a look at, which will allow us to see the value and volume for each one, the X and the Y, in that series. And this is how we would then go back to that scatter data to look up a particular supplier number that should be reviewed more fully.